Well, hello everyone. This is DC with the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be back talking about Alabama football. Today is September the 1st, 2020. We are finally in the month where we're going to play football. 25 days away from the first game as we kick off against the Missouri Tigers. So it's glad to be back. We look forward to doing this podcast today. Lance and I really appreciate your support. Thank you for continuing to listen to our podcast. We had so many people last week that were new that jumped on. We got a lot of shares and a lot of retweets, and we appreciate it. Everyone who listens, if you'll share it and retweet it, get the word out there about our podcast, we sure would appreciate it. Well, today on the podcast, in the first segment, we're going to take a look at the state of the team, where we are right now, where we just going into our fourth week of practice and had our first scrimmage. What is the state of the team right now during this time? In the second segment, we're going to review the offense from the scrimmage, highlight a few players. In our third segment, defense takes center stage as we highlight the defense from this past Saturday's scrimmage.
You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com.
Well, again, welcome to the podcast. We are so glad to be here. This is DC with the DC Capstone Report. Today on the first segment, we're going to talk about the state of the team. Well, at the opening, when I came on, we talked about we're in September. It's September the 1st, 2020, and we're talking about football. But not only are we talking about football, but we're looking forward to the first game. 25 days from the day, Alabama will be kicking off their first game against the Missouri Tigers. This shortened COVID full conference schedule begins with on the road with the Missouri Tigers. And today we get to tell all of our listeners out there that it has been announced that that'll be a prime time 6 p.m. ESPN game. So look forward to seeing us on ESPN. The full schedule was released today, and the first game Alabama has is on September the 26th at 6 p.m. on the ESPN network. So where are we today with the state of the team? What's the team looking like? We're entering our fourth week of practice, and this past Saturday was a benchmark, the first scrimmage of the year. So a couple of observations I want to make from the first scrimmage globally as a team. Then in our second segment, we're going to talk about the offense. In the third segment, we'll talk about specifically on the defense. But overall, the team, where are we right now? What's the state of this team? Well, number one, this team, to me, is more unified and together than some of the past teams that Alabama has put on the field. There's been a lot going on in the 2020. A lot of things have happened. With the virus that's out there, there's been a lot of uncertainty. Some schools, some leagues aren't playing. And this has been a lot of uncertainty, but Alabama football is unified. Yesterday, Coach Saban led the team in a march from the football complex over to historic Foster Auditorium right here in Tuscaloosa. It was a march for change, a march for social justice, and just to see that team unified, 100% of the team voted, all the players, that was something they wanted to do to show their support for change in America, for social justice, the racial unrest, everything that's going on in America. They wanted to make a statement as a team. So Coach Saban led them in that march. It was a very peaceful march. It was a very peaceful time. Several of the players spoke, but mainly it was a unifying time for this team to come together. So I think this team is more unified than ever. Secondly, the first scrimmage that took place on Saturday gave a great indication of the shape this team is in. The new strength and conditioning coaches under Matt Ballou and Coach Ballou and Dr. Ray, they have come in and provided a new strength and conditioning sports science department. A lot of different things gone into it, but one thing that showed up in this scrimmage was that the team is in good shape. The first scrimmage is always a test. And yes, some of the younger players, as well as some of their freshman parents, got tested by the heat and humidity on a Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But that always happens when you have your first scrimmage. There's a lot. The heat is something you have to fight against. But although some of the younger players and some of the veteran players succumb a little bit to the heat, this team showed up in really, really good shape. And that's not only a testament to our strength and conditioning coaches, but also a testament to the training. Our training staff is second to none, as I've always said. Nationwide, you won't find a better training staff than has at Alabama. So when you look at this team, they're in great shape, and that's something wonderful to come. The second thing that came from the scrimmage that I think is a big indicator of how good a shape the team is in is no major injuries reported. You know, this time last year we had a rash of injuries and torn up knees and ACLs and hamstrings. No major injuries reported. A couple of injuries of note we'll talk about, or people were held out of the scrimmage. We'll talk about that as we get into the specifics of the second and third segment. But overall, this team showed up well in the scrimmage, well in shape, and came out of the scrimmage with no visible injuries. The one player that had been held out before, Ali Cahoe, he was back and able to participate. So that is good. The other thing that was important in this scrimmage, it seemed like the communication on both sides of the ball, the communication on the offense and the communication on the defense was really, really good. One of the things that we had problems last year on defense was translating that coaching communication from the sidelines to the field and to the players. And I think a big cog missing last year was Dylan Moses and his leadership. But this year with Dylan Moses and his leadership and Josh McMillan with his leadership coming back, both of those players had something to prove. Josh McMillan is coming back with an opportunity, as he stated even today. He had something to prove, and by coming back, it didn't feel good for him to leave the way it did with the 11-2 season. He didn't want to end his career that way, so he comes back and provides some great leadership. Dylan Moses being on the field is definitely a big help. And also the veterans on the defensive line. So across the board, it's been a better communication to take care of coming out of the scrimmage. So I think overall the state of the team at this time of the year is very, very good. They're upbeat, they're encouraged, they have they're in good physical shape, have less injuries, and I think they're setting themselves up to take advantage of a great year. With that, we talked about last week in the podcast, will we play a season? Will we have a season? Well, I can tell you this much. This Alabama team is preparing like they're going to take the field on September 26th and face the Missouri Tigers in prime time on ESPN. That's how this team is preparing. So the state of the team is good. The last thing about the state of the team I think is affected this year is the lack of turnover in the coaching staff. The continuity in the coaching staff has showed in this first scrimmage. And the new coach that came on, Freddie Roach, he has really hit the trail, great recruiting, but he also has gotten the players to buy into the way he coaches. I heard LeBron Ray make a statement which I thought was very, very telling, and he said that not only he corrects them and what they've done wrong, but he tells them the reason for how he wants them to do it, the way he wants them to do it, and that's a big plus, and it tells you how much Freddie Roach has brought a great continuity and coaching to this already good staff. So state of the team of Alabama is really good going into their first scrimmage of the year. Well, the second segment today, we're going to look at the offense from the first scrimmage. The offense. Everybody wants to know, what's the offense look like? Well, Coach Saban, unlike in years past, was able to. He actually talked about in his press conference immediately following the scrimmage some of the numbers. So we know that Mac Jones had a very productive day. He was 21 of 36 with 3 TDs. Now that's 58%. But really what was impressive by that is the numbers of times that he did connect with some of the young wide receivers downfield that made a big difference. Now, when you put a microscope on that, a person would looking back would say, well, he didn't have that great a game. But I think he really had a really good. And Mac Jones is really producing as a leader. I think he's improving. The only thing that from my reports from the people that I've been speaking with who have knowledge of what went on at the scrimmage, the only thing I can have heard them say is that Mac Jones needs to play within himself. He doesn't need to, with this roster that he has, he doesn't need to go outside and play and try to make something happen. He just needs to play within the skill set that he has and do a good job. He didn't have to be a Tua. He didn't have to be a Jalen. He just has to show up every day and be Mac Jones, and he'll do just fine. So I think did a respectable job. 21 of 36 for 3 TDs. The other quarterback, Paul Tyson, got some really good reps in this scrimmage due to the fact that that Bryce Young was held out of the game. He was held out of this. Everybody wanted to see what he was going to do in this game, in this scrimmage. How was Bryce Young, as a freshman, going to stack up? What was he going to get to put up some numbers? But he was held out of this. He said he would be back Monday, and he was. He was available with the team on Monday. So what you make of that? He wasn't injured. You can make some observations. So maybe he was held out under the COVID protocol. We don't know that for sure because they don't release those information on individuals. That's against HIPAA regulations. But you can put 2 and 2 together and say that he may have been quarantined under COVID procedure, and that's why he couldn't participate. So he is not injured. That's a good thing. But Paul Tyson got some reps and did well himself. Other on the offense was concentration on the wide receivers, the young wide receivers. Jayvon Baker, number 5, he's a 6'2" freshman out of Powder Springs, Georgia. I've mentioned him before on this podcast and told you to watch out for him. Well, he didn't disappoint in this scrimmage. I understand he really did good. He had opportunities to make some plays, and he made some plays that helped Mac Jones. So he looked really good in this game. So in this scrimmage game. Another wide receiver freshman, 6'3" from Kissimmee, Florida, Treyshawn Holden, number 11, also showed up and did really well in this particular scrimmage as well. So the young wide receivers to go along with Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith are really doing good. Also John Mechie, Xavier Williams, Slade Bolin, all of them had a really good scrimmage and pass catching abilities were highlighted during this scrimmage. On the running backs, you look for Najee Harris and Brian Robinson. They both did really good in what they got to see. But it's not unheard of for Coach Saban in a scrimmage, in the first scrimmage of the year, to not rely too heavily on their seniors and try to look at some of the younger players. So, Najee Harris and Brian Robinson didn't get a lot of carries in this scrimmage. And you would think that would mean it would fall to Trey Sanders. But my understanding from the people that I know that were on spot in the scrimmage was that he was limited, maybe even held out of this scrimmage a little bit, may have tweaked a hamstring. But there's nothing wrong with his knee. His knee is completely developed. His recovery has gone well. And they just wanted to make sure that he was held out so they didn't have any problems down the road. So Trey Sanders, look for him to bounce back, get some rehab done on his hamstring. It was just a slight pull, and just want to make sure that it's well before the next scrimmage. But look for him to be back practicing with the team this week. So normally that would open up the 4 slot for Keelan Robinson to get some carries. But my understanding from people they're in the know, that they've been watching this, that he has not been with the team. There's been no announcement on this. So Coach Saban made an announcement earlier that if someone were to opt out of the season, they weren't going to make that known. That's the player wanted to make it known. So that's my guess on this, is that Keelan Robinson has opted out. He's not with the team. He hasn't entered his name in the transfer portal. Nothing of that's happened. But maybe his lack of being there is that he's opted out to play. I don't know that for sure. That's my guess, my best guess, because there's been no injury announcements on him. There's been no question about him transferring. I think maybe he might have opted out for the season. So what did that do? That opened up the slot for the young freshman running backs to get some carries. And I was told that they did not disappoint when they got an opportunity to run the ball in this scrimmage. They did a really good job. And that was, one of the standouts was Jase McClellan. Jase McClellan is a running back freshman out of Aldeo, Texas. He's 5'11", 212, and wears number 21. I understand he got some carries and did a really good job. One of the other freshmen, Roydell Williams, right out of Hueytown, Alabama, 5'10", 210, wears number 23. I understand he did a really good job. And then Kyle Edwards, number 27, a freshman, 6 foot, 209 running back out of Traeshon, Louisiana. So these 3 freshmen, capitalizing on the opportunities given by the way things stacked up in this scrimmage, did a really good job on the offensive side of the ball. Because they did good and because the quarterbacks did good, one of the things that you can, in deductive reason from that, is that the offensive line did a good job in this scrimmage as well. So I think they had their moments, and I think the defense had their moments in this scrimmage. So overall, it was a really, really good scrimmage. But the line looked good. They looked fit. And it looked like there was a lot of players that were interchangeable, could play along that line of scrimmage for the offensive line. So overall in this scrimmage, it was a good day. No, for the offense, there was no injuries to speak of. Everyone played well, looked well, and showed up in shape. The only drawback was the heat, and some of the freshmen did get a little treatment from the heat as well. But I think the offense did really good. So we'll see how they practice this week, and look forward to the next scrimmage to see how much this offense progresses. Well, in the third and final segment, we're going to look at the defense. The defense usually has an upper hand on the offense in the first scrimmage, and they do real well because of the putting into the game plans, and maybe always the defense a little farther ahead than the offense. Alabama's defense is coming off a year where they need to make some improvement, and everything that I heard coming out of this scrimmage was good. That this defense had made some improvements, mainly in the communication, and it looks like that the year has really done well for the freshmen that were linebackers last year, and Christian Harris and Shane Lee. They're even more poised this year. And then you got Dylan Moses and Josh McMillian back for their senior seasons or redshirt senior seasons, and just an opportunity for the communication to even get better. So they did a really good job on defense in this scrimmage, communicating the plays and getting the defense in the right positions. Now this is important because this is the first time of this practice, this 3-week practice, when they had this scrimmage at the end of 3 weeks, the first time they were without coaches on the field to put them in the right position. So now we saw it translate really well. The outside linebackers were highlighted by Coach Saban in his press conference. He called out Ben Davis and Chris Allen. He spoke to them before, so it's really encouraging to see Ben Davis finally as a senior, a redshirt senior, to step up and be playing so well in these scrimmages and these practices, to have his name called out by Coach Saban. We need that on the outside linebacker position. Right behind them, we got 2 freshmen that are vying for playing time. They get, from what I've heard at this scrimmage, both of them have shown out and did a really good job. Will Anderson is someone that I've highlighted before as a player to watch, and he showed up in this scrimmage. He's 6'4", 235 pounds, from Hampton, Georgia. He's number 31. He showed up and did a great job in this scrimmage on a hot day, and looked to be in really good shape and looked to play really well, from what I was told. Also, another outside linebacker who showed up in this game that we haven't talked about, a freshman, is Drew Sanders. And Drew Sanders was able to show up and play well on the outside as well as a freshman. So it's always good to see our freshman outside linebackers contributing, because that was with what we had that's gone on and graduated. That was an area that we were looking for people to show up and make some contributions. So it's really good to see the freshmen making contributions like that at the outside linebacker position. The other position on the field that seemed to really, freshmen that seemed to really show up and make a name for themselves in this game, is the defensive backs. There was a couple of defensive backs that was in this scrimmage that really did a great job. Number 1 was number 14, Brian Branch, a freshman out of Tyrone, Georgia. We talked about him on the podcast before. He's really been doing well in practice, but it translated really well for him in the scrimmage game. And he did a really good job in the defensive backfield. And the other is Malachi Moore. Haven't called his name out as much from the practices, but he's 6 foot, 182 pounds, from Trussville, Alabama, played at Hewitt-Trussville. He really did a good job. Looks like Brian Branch, maybe Malachi Moore, are going to be pushing for some playing time in this young secondary that Alabama puts on the field. So overall, it was a really good scrimmage for the defense. They did a good job, got in the right positions, and I think it's another good indicator of the progressing that they've made from that last year to this year. And just quickly want to throw in a couple of tidbits on our kickers. Everybody talks about Alabama kickers, but Will Reichard seems to have come back, significantly increased his power from his injury last year. So these strength and conditioning coaches working with him and the training staff, Jeff Allen is second to none as a head trainer and those that work for him, but he has really bought into the regiment they had for him, and he's come back really well. My understanding from someone who attended the scrimmage that spoke to me, that he hit like a 54-yard field goal in this game, in the scrimmage. That was good. So it's really good to hear him coming back, and hope he continues to progress. Well, we always talk about our punting. We hadn't had a really punter since J.K. Scott, and I told you that there was a walk-on. J.K. Scott's brother had walked on to be a punter on this team, and that he was somebody named Charlie Scott that we might watch for. But what I understand from this scrimmage, not only did Ty Pirine do good as he did the duties last year, ended up doing the punting duties last year, there's a walk-on punter that I've heard we need to watch for. He's 6'3", 215-pound freshman out of Birmingham, Alabama, played at Oakman High School. His name is Sam Johnson. He's number 98. So that's a name that we might want to look out for as we move into the season to see how the punting duties shake out. Well, that's it here with the DC Capstone Report today. We're glad to be here back with you. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, we will be back next week with the podcast to see how this week's fourth week of practice has progressed. But don't forget, we're in the month now where we can start talking about the game. 25 days from the day, Alabama will be kicking off against the Missouri Tigers there on the road, 6 p.m. on ESPN. Look forward to that game. Well, until next time, this is DC with the DC Capstone Report, telling everyone, roll Tide.